Good day with your major newscast. I'm Jessica Daw. First with the highlights. President Irfan Ali this morning sought to justify the government-imposed 7% salary increase for public servants for 2021. Former Finance Minister Winston Jordan is refuting the president's claims. General Secretary of the Guyana Trades Union Congress, Lincoln Lewis, says the union is committed to ensuring that the government honors its commitment to pay workers an adequate living wage. Acting Chancellor of the Judiciary Justice Yonet Cummings Edwards to hand down the court's decision December 21, 2021 in the election petition appeal brought by the opposition. In the region, the Suriname dollar has dropped in value by more than 60% over the past year. New research shows that the increase in gun violence is significantly impacting the ability of police in Barbados to solve homicides. And internationally, more countries are tightening their travel restrictions after a new coronavirus variant was identified in southern Africa earlier this week. The details of these stories and more in just a moment.
Advertise with us on News Talk Radio Guyana 103.1 FM for best coverage on programs on motivation, beauty and health, parenting and relationships, knowing your rights, and a variety of enlightening content, and get value for your money. Call our helpful staff today on 223-1056 or 223-1041 today.
Now for the news in detail. President Irfan Ali this morning sought to justify the government-imposed 7% for public servants for 2021. Former Finance Minister under the APNU plus AFC coalition administration refutes the president's claims. President Irfan Ali says his government has not broken protocol and followed in the steps of the former administration who taxed increases.
There was a promise of a graduated and annual 10% increase. We never accomplished that. In the first year, for example, there was and if you look at the increase that the APNU AFC government would have given, the total value of that increase paid in 2015 was $917.3 million. In 2015, the total value of the increase was $917.3 million. Now, the PAY, when you take out the PAYE that the APNU AFC government took back from the workers, when you take back the PAYE that the government took back from the salary increase, it was approximately $222.1 million you are taking back.
Former Finance Minister Winston Jordan disagrees with the president.
We introduced the concept of tax-free back pay in 2018, and we continued it in 2019. When I went to Cabinet on the two occasions, 2018 and 2019, to get their permission to pay the back pay tax-free, my argument was that we were holding on, as a government, we were holding on to the increases of the public servants because there was no agreement with the unions on the increases, so that we would have been able to pay from January 1. So by the time we were ready to pay, even in the face of no agreement with the unions, we would have been using this back pay that the workers should have gotten since the increases since from January 1. We would have been using it for other expenditure in the government. So I said the least that we could have done is to compensate them for using their money by giving them it tax-free.
President Ali outlined that the scaling of increase by the former APNU plus AFC administration pauperized workers.
What became of the disposable income? How effective was $100,000 as disposable income? Notwithstanding the fact that some categories of public servants only got 0.5% increase, in their sliding scale. Some got 1%. We forgot that it was a sliding scale. And some categories, the highly qualified public servants, were driven out of the system with a 0.5% increase and a 1% increase. They would want you to forget that.
Mr. Winston Jordan says his government began work to bridge the gap between rich and poor.
If you give everybody across the board, it means everybody equally gets the same percentage. But essentially what you do is you widen the gap if you give an across the board increase between the person at the top and the person at the bottom. You widen the gap. Because 2% of a person, 2% or 10% of a salary of a person who is working for $1 million, 10% is $100,000. 10% of a person who is working for $70,000 is $7,000. It appears to be equal because everybody gets the same percent increase, but it is not equitable. The person at the bottom who is already not meeting their basic needs, how will they ever get an opportunity to get towards what you call a livable wage if you continue to increase their salaries by the same percentage increase that you increase in salaries at the top?
The government has declined to respond to several requests of the Guyana Public Service Union to engage in talks on a wages and salaries increase for public servants. General Secretary of the Guyana Trades Union Congress committed to ensuring that the government honors its commitment to pay workers an adequate living wage. President Irfan Ali on Friday said his government refuses to engage unions that have a political agenda. The GTUC General Secretary Lincoln Lewis referenced the position of the government in regards to unions sympathetic to the government.
The GAU is an arm of the PPP, right? I have seen the previous government, the coalition, allowing negotiation between GAU and GAISUKU, and even the government met the GAU. Well, it's an arm of the PPP. What Irfan is saying, it is, I cannot dream to understand as a president he will ever make such a statement. This is a man when the PSU came out against what was offered to the workers, the public servants. He came out and he supported the PSU. It was not a political agenda then. It was another agenda.
The GTUC General Secretary says the government is to be held accountable for private sector workers being pauperized by a stagnant national minimum wage.
It is being done through an order by the government, right? The tripartite committee agreed more than 2 years ago on the issue of moving it from 45,500 to the point of 60,000. The Minister Scott did not do the order, and Ali, when it came to government, Ali says that he will not at this time increase the minimum wage. So they have a position on it. So all these things are issues that all these things are issues that need to be prosecuted.
Mr. Lincoln Lewis committed that the unions will continue to make representations for workers. He says the president is in breach of the law, refusing to, as an employer, to meet with unions. Acting Chancellor of the Judiciary Justice Unit Cummings Edwards to hand down the court's decision December 21, 2021 in the election petition appeal brought by the opposition. The coalition APNU plus AFC is appealing a decision of the Chief Justice in the High Court on the grounds of technicality when the CJ found that the second respondent, David Granger, was not served within the stipulated in the 5-day rules of filing an election petition. The Chief Justice also held that Thomas and Nurse were aware of their defaults and should have moved speedily to correct the same. Because the 5 days elapsed without properly serving Mr. Granger, the CJ declared he was not lawfully served with the court documents by the petitioners. The Chief Justice had ruled that Granger is a necessary and a proper party in the petition as he is the representative of the coalition's list. The coalition had filed 2 petitions challenging the results of the March 2, 2020 general and regional elections. In the petition, the coalition contends that fraud was committed during the elections, rendering a large portion of the votes cast for the PPPC invalid. The Federation of Independent Trade Unions in Guyana, FITUG, is calling on the private sector to increase wages and salaries for workers in their employ to match the government's increase. In a statement, the umbrella union called for private sector businesses to offer increases to their employees. The union says while the pay raise may not have met the expectations of some, the increase is several times more than what those employers are offering to their employees in the private sector. The union says it cannot be ignored that there is a widening disparity between the national and the public sector minimum wages. FITUG says the recent announced increase by the government has widened the salary gap between the public and the private sectors to a $30,700 per month difference. The union says this means employees at the national minimum wage level in the private sector must work 2 months to earn $70,000 their counterparts in the public sector are earning. The union says the current national minimum wage is a pauperization wage and again urges the government to address in a meaningful manner the long outstanding issue. FITUG says the need to raise the national minimum wage has become an urgent need for an adjustment. The construction of the Guyana Fire Service new headquarters to start in December this year as the government inked a $614 million contract with Mohammed's enterprise. The government's Department of Public Information says the Ministry of Home Affairs awarded the contract to Mohammed's enterprise on Wednesday. The contract was signed between the ministry's permanent secretary, May Thomas, and Nazir Mohammed of Mohammed's enterprise. The new headquarters is to be located on a site already identified on Homestretch Avenue, Georgetown. Construction will commence no later than December 1, 2021, and is expected to last for some 14 months. Minister of Home Affairs Robson Ben, Member of Parliament who witnessed the signing ceremony, says the relocation of the Guyana Fire and Ambulance Service will help increase the emergency response time as it will be away from the heavily congested Stabroek Market area. The Home Affairs Minister says the fire service will have adequate space for training sessions with the new modern facilities that will be constructed. 3 people, 1 fully vaccinated and 2 unvaccinated persons, succumbed to the COVID virus, taking the toll to 983. The Health Ministry says one of the unvaccinated was not tallied in April of this year and is now accounted for in the tally. The ministry's data show a minimal increase overall in serious and positive cases, with 89 new infections recorded and 14 persons seriously sick in the COVID intensive care. There are another 72 persons hospitalized and 3 others under observation by healthcare workers. The ministry says it has fully vaccinated 53% of the population, or 273,880 adults and 20,112 children ages 12 to 17 years old. They are 398,281 adults, or 77% partially vaccinated, and 28,930 children ages 12 to 17 years old partially vaccinated. Now for the news in the region. The Suriname dollar has dropped in value by more than 60% over the past year. Star News reports that the period of currency devaluation dates from October 2020 to October 2021. The figure is based on information from the General Bureau of Statistics. Inflation last year was 60.8%. In October 2021, compared to the previous month, September, consumer prices rose by an average of 1.5%. The Suriname Stats Bureau says this included the prices of various items in the period October 1 through October 29. The Stats Bureau says housing, maintenance, home repairs, and utilities have increased by 105% in 1 year. Butter, oils, and the fats have gone up in the year at 82%. Soft drinks, juices, and water are up 80.6%. The Consumer Price Index, CPI, is a measure of the average change in the price of a fixed package of goods and services intended for consumer purposes in terms of quality and quantity. Noted intellectual property expert Dr. Erica Smith has urged Caribbean rum producers to use intellectual property to strengthen their business model in order to stand out from the competition. Barbados Today reports that Dr. Smith says at the same time, rum producers can learn from what consumers are saying about their competitors. Delivering a presentation at a West Indies Rum and Spirit Producers Association Incorporated WRSPA webinar, she says the concept of intellectual property can be used to differentiate products and services in the market. Dr. Smith, head of IP firm Intellectual Management Service Incorporated, said there was a close nexus between IP and marketing from a strategic perspective with the aim of expanding and creating new markets. She advises that the value of intellectual property is to create inclusivity in the marketplace, to generate premium prices and increase sales. Dr. Smith, who was addressing the forum on using intellectual property rights to leverage rum brand development, also warned rum producers to pay close attention to patent applications. New research shows that the increase in gun violence is significantly impacting the ability of police in Barbados to solve homicides. Barbados Nation reports that the findings have been made available by the Criminal Justice and Research Planning Unit. The 2018 to 2020 study conducted by statistician Tamisha Howell shows that the clearance rate has declined to the point where just under 40% of homicides remain unsolved. While lawmen had a 90% and above clearance rate for murders committed with weapons of convenience such as knives and stones, only 45% of those gun-related had been solved. Howell presented her findings entitled An Examination of Gun-Related Homicides in Barbados during a webinar yesterday hosted by the Criminal Justice and Research Planning Unit. She said that the higher the number of gun-related killings, the lower would be the percentage of solved murder cases. And lastly, in the region, hundreds of dredging rafts operated by illegal miners have gathered in a gold rush on Brazil's Madeira River, a major tributary of the Amazon. The rafts are floating hundreds of miles as state and federal authorities dispute who is responsible for stopping them. The flotilla of rafts equipped with pumps are moored together in lines that nearly stretch across the vast Madeira, and Reuters witnessed spotted clumps of exhaust indicating they are vacuuming the riverbed for gold. Greenpeace Brazil activist Danceli Agar says he and colleagues have counted at least 300 rafts. He says they have been there at least 2 weeks and the government has done nothing. Federal police say they are looking at the best way to deal with the problem and so avoiding environmental damage. The gold rush, triggered by rumors that someone had found gold there, began as world leaders gathered for a United Nations climate conference in Glasgow, where Brazil vowed it had stepped up protection of the Amazon rainforest. A spokesperson for Brazil's Environmental Protection Agency, IBAMA, said the illegal dredging on the Madeira River was the responsibility not of the federal government, but of Amazonas state and its environmental agency. The environmental agency said in a statement that the rafts anchored on the river were under federal jurisdiction, so the National Mining Agency was responsible for licensing, and it was up to the federal police to see if any crimes had been committed. River traffic and pollution was the Navy's area. And here now is your international news from the BBC.
Hello, I'm Debbie Russ with the BBC News. Belgium has reported Europe's first case of the new coronavirus variant, which was first detected in South Africa. In the past hour, the European Commission has responded by calling for the suspension of all air travel to 6 southern African countries. Its president, Ursula von der Leyen, told reporters in Brussels they were taking the new variant very seriously.
We do know that mutations could lead to the emergence and spread of even more concerning variants of the virus that could spread worldwide within a few months. It is now important that all of us in Europe act very swiftly, decisively and united.
She reminded manufacturers that their contracts with the EU mean they must adapt their vaccines immediately. At the same time, the World Health Organization is holding a special meeting to consider the significance of the new strain, as Imogen Folks reports from Geneva.
Many countries are scrambling to put travel restrictions in place in a bid to stop the new variant spreading. But the discovery of a case in Belgium could mean they are too late. Today, WHO experts will decide whether B11529 is a variant of concern. Is it more infectious? Does it cause more severe illness? Could it evade the vaccines? It may take weeks to get detailed answers, but initial evidence shows this variant has substantial differences to the original COVID-19 virus that could make it more dangerous.
Stock markets around the world have taken a hit as concerns grow about the variant. The main US index, the Dow Jones, has opened sharply lower following heavy losses earlier on European and Asian stock markets. The South African government has expressed disappointment at the travel bans. The tourism minister congratulated South Africa's scientists for identifying the strain, but said putting the country on red travel lists was premature. The Ethiopian government has announced new restrictions on reporting the war, in which Tigrayan rebels are said to be continuing their advance towards the capital. It's banned the reporting of any military movements or updates from the battlefield unless approved by the government. State media have shown footage of the Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed in a rural location wearing a military uniform after saying days ago that he would head to the front line to direct the conflict. In an interview, he sounded defiant and said government troops had retaken some territory.
The enemy doesn't know our capabilities and our preparations. Because of their contempt and due to their wrong evaluation of us, they have made attempted attacks. But instead of sitting in Addis, we decided to come here to the front. This mountain here was held by the enemy until yesterday. Now we have captured it.
The Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. You're listening to the World News from the BBC. A row between France and Britain over migrant crossings has intensified as the two sides respond to the deaths of 27 people who were trying to reach the UK. Britain says a letter that angered President Macron, which was sent and published by the Prime Minister Boris Johnson, was perfectly reasonable. It contained proposals on how to prevent further crossings. The President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, says he expects an escalation in his country's conflict with Russia. Mr. Zelensky said his intelligence service had received information about a possible coup attempt next week with the involvement of people in Russia. A Russian government spokesman rejected the allegation. The United Nations has expressed alarm about a reported attack on a Libyan court where Saif al-Islam Gaddafi's lawyer was trying to lodge an appeal against his ban from next month's presidential election. Our Middle East analyst Mike Thompson has more.
Saif al-Gaddafi's lawyer, Khalid al-Zaidi, said that armed men had raided the court in the southern city of Sebha, one of only 3 registration centres, and prevented him from getting inside. Mr al-Zaidi had gone there to lodge an appeal on behalf of his client, following Mr Gaddafi's disqualification yesterday by Libya's Elections Commission. This was made on the basis of a 2015 conviction in absentia for war crimes by a Tripoli court. Sebha is under the control of a group allied to the eastern-based Libyan National Army, commanded by General Khalifa Haftar, another of the main candidates.
Environmental groups have criticised the International Maritime Organization for not doing enough to combat climate change. The Clean Shipping Coalition said the UN body was being held hostage by a small group of countries, including China, Russia and Saudi Arabia, that blocked proposals to cut the sector's greenhouse gas emissions at the recent climate summit in Glasgow. BBC News.
And that was your international news. Here now is a recap of the highlights. President Irfan Ali this morning sought to justify the government-imposed 7% salary increase for public servants for 2021. Former Finance Minister Winston Jordan is refuting the president's claims. General Secretary of the Guyana Trades Union Congress, Lincoln Lewis, says the union is committed to ensuring that the government honors its commitment to pay workers an adequate living wage. Acting Chancellor of the Judiciary Justice Yonette Cummings Edwards to hand down the court's decision December 21, 2021 in the election petition appeal brought by the opposition. In the region, the Suriname dollar has dropped in value by more than 60% over the past year. New research shows that the increase in gun violence is significantly impacting the ability of police in Barbados to solve homicides. And internationally, more countries are tightening their travel restrictions after a new coronavirus variant was identified in southern Africa earlier this week. And that was your major newscast. I'm Jessica Daw.
This has been the news, compiled in the News Talk Radio Newsroom. For ongoing updates, visit demerarawaves.com, and you can check facebook.com/demwaves and twitter.com/demwaves.